Welcome, everyone, to Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff, where we talk about wrestling and we talk about stuff. I'm on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. For all of you today, we're doing a special guest interview for our episode today, folks, live via phone, iPhone for me, and I believe you're on a Motorola phone for you, if I'm not mistaken. Let's give it up for Mr. Carl Styles, everybody. Hey, Carl, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, Larry, and it's a pleasure to be on here with you. And hopefully the people out there can get some information they wouldn't get nowhere else.
Absolutely, Carl.
I've got a lot of stories I could go into, but I'll just sort of get into how I got started.
Well, first of all, let's say, what companies did you work for, Carl Styles, so they know who you worked for in your illustrious career? How long were you a wrestler for? And you're a current wrestler, right, Carl?
Yeah, I wrestled for on and off 30 years. I was in it. I started in the early 80s. And the first territory I ever wrestled was Mid-South Promotions.
Okay.
But before then, I worked with Mike Jackson and Austin Idol down in Birmingham, Alabama. I wrestled at the same high school that Bo Jackson went to at Bessemer.
Bo Jackson!
So anyway, I don't know if he's there or not, but when I was wrestling for Bob Geigel up in Kansas City, I did go to a Royals game and see him play. I think he hit a home run there. That was in 87, I think, was when that happened. And anyway, we've done several different things. I started off with Mid-South Promotions, and I got trained by Terry Gordy's uncle's the one that trained me. His name was J.D. Cowell. He also trained Terry Gordy, and Gordy was, done extremely good there. He got in with Don Carson. Don Carson took him to Canada, and that paved the way for him being the Freebird and getting in with Hayes and all that. And he had another cousin of his, Richard Slinger, that was going to Japan for about 45 or 50 weeks of the year. So, anyway, I got trained with some good people, and then when I got to, Mid-South Promotions, I got in with Cowboy Bill Watts, and got in with Dutch Mantell and Bill Dundee and Dick Murdoch, and Nord the Barbarian was there, and I worked with him up in Oregon when I was the Northwest Heavyweight Champion, and I had the TV championship belt up there later on, and wrestled in Europe. Dick Murdoch got me to Europe, and also wrestled in Puerto Rico. Wrestled there. Wrestled all the top names down in there. Wrestled up over the Butcher and Carlos Colon and Vader, that Jose Gonzalez, and that TNT, which is Savio Vega. Wrestled the Youngbloods. I wrestled the Youngbloods. Harley Race was down there, and had a really good match with Mark Youngblood, and the booker was Gonzalez, and he wanted me to work a program with him. So when I come out of the ring, Harley told me, he said, Carl, that's a good match. So I met Youngblood back at the motel, and he said, Carl, he's really wanting to work with you. So I went from middle of the card to main event there just because I had that really good match. Because when Youngblood got back to the dressing room, he said, oh, you worked with him many, many times before. And Youngblood kept telling him, no, I hadn't met him till tonight. We had separate dressing rooms. So finally, he kept on, and finally Youngblood said, what can I say, Jose? The guy can work. So I was in main events, and I was working with Abdullah and Carlos and all the top talent they had down there, and they had a lot of good talent. Ron Starr was down there. I've watched him, in Chattanooga.
Well, may I ask you a question about Abdullah?
Yeah, Abdullah, he was a good guy. We done some autograph sessions here the last couple of years ago, and I always liked him, got along good with him.
You know what's interesting you say that, Carl? You're saying you like the guy with the name The Butcher, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the same person, Abdullah The Butcher?
That's him, the guy with the fork, he wrestled with Brody. I always liked Brody, too. I worked with Brody up in Kansas City. Me and Mr. Pogo had a run-in, and a friend of mine, Hustler Rip Rogers, he was the Booker, and me and the Warlord was the Central States Tag Team Champions with Rips Road Warriors. That Warlord was a 650-pound bencher, and I was benching about 550.
Carl, describe your features to our audience, since we don't have you visually and we only have you here in audio. How big of a man are you?
I'm about 6'1". I'm 280 pounds. I'm on this Facebook. It's under Carl Styles, and I'm out of Murphy, North Carolina, so you can find me pretty easy. But I am very impressive. I'm, in the matches on that Facebook, there's like 5 matches. About 4 of them's over the year 2000. There's one of them that was the country boy gimmick at Piper, and the grappler gave me up in Oregon, and Don Owens.
You mean the late great Roddy Piper?
Yeah, I was good friends with him up there and had a lot of respect for him, and it was a good territory to work. Don Owens paid really good too, and easy territory. I like working for Don. I also like working for Robert Fuller and and Ron, but Robert, I mostly worked for Robert, and that was in Continental. They had a good territory. They called it Southeastern at times. They had David Schultz coming in Southeastern. That was when it was in Pensacola when they had Schultz coming in. But I worked with Dutch, Wendell Cooley. I worked with him in Mid-South, but also worked with him in Continental. They had Tom Pritchard up there. Tom was a good hand.
Are you talking about Dr. Schultz who slapped Stossel?
Yeah, I never did work with him, but Piper, liked him a lot. He said that him and Paul Orndorff was 2 of the toughest fellas you could ever, find there. They were sort of done that first WrestleMania thing, and Piper held them in high esteem. Schultz was real good. He's a good worker, but he's also good on the mic.
Yes.
And Orndorff, he was really good and looked really good. And
absolutely, that's why he was Mr. Wonderful.
Well, he could play the part, and he worked everywhere. He worked in Georgia. He worked up there for the Fuller some too. I worked a little bit for Mike Graham down in Florida, not much, but I always liked Mike.
He has a lot of respect in that territory, in the Florida territory. Yeah. Mike Graham did.
Yeah, he was well respected. I'll tell you who was down there that was crazy, but was a pretty nice person, was old Luna Vachon. She was down there, and she, we had a show, and she said, Mike, you need to book us more, so I can get better. So Mike, trying to be diplomatic, he said, well, Luna, I'm doing the best I can, but she was wanting to learn and get better, back in the mid-'80s when I was down there. I went down for Gordon solely, and I was good friends with Gordon, and he worked for the Fullers up there in Continental too. He done a lot of commentating up there.
So basically, my question to you, sir, did you ever feel that Animal and Hawk, you said you were around the Road Warriors. I heard you mention their names, right?
I wasn't around them much. I was around their buddy there, Johnny Nord. He was the Barbarian. He was the Mid-South Barbarian.
Oh, the Mid-South Barbarian. That's right. Not the actual. Let's not mistaken with the other Barbarian from the World Wrestling Federation.
No, he was the Mid-South Barbarian, and then he wrestled for Vern up there. He liked the Gagnes up there. He worked a lot for them, and he really, really looked up to Bruiser Brody. When I met Brody in Kansas City, I mentioned John Nord, and they were already good friends from AWA, and Brody, he liked me a lot. He took good care of me, and Mr. Pogo, he knows Pogo from Japan. Pogo, good worker, good hand, nice guy, he's a, a lot of, you watch your matches, before or after your match. And, you could enjoy the ones that's really good. And Pogo was good. And Buddy that I had down there and that I worked with actually for Austin Idol and Mike Jackson, that Ken Towns, he was real good. So I worked with Ken in those independent shows before I, got booked into Mid-South. And both of them was really good.
Carl, may I ask you a question real quick? I hate to interrupt you, but did you ever really have many interactions with Vern Gagne?
Not really. When I come down, Dundee brought me in, and I've been working for Jody Hamilton, the original assassin. And I come in, and they got the belts. Me and Hector Guerrero was AWA World Tag Team Champions. You can go to Hector's YouTube page. You can see Hector Guerrero and Dr. D. And I was, jacked up really good. Still pretty green, but we won the belts. And we held them about a week, I think. We defended them 2 or 3 times.
A whole week?
A whole week, yeah. We didn't, that didn't last long, but, we are recognized as world champions. They can't take that away from us. And those, very prestigious belts, and all the belts I held was prestigious. I held the Deep South Tag Team Championship for Jody, me and this guy, Ranger Ross, and I held the Central States Tag Team Championship belt with the Warlord. He was a very nice guy. He's a Minnesota guy, too. And the Northwest belt, it was certainly a prestigious belt, because you have people like Kurt Hennig and Roddy Piper, and Jimmy Snuka, and Rip Oliver, the grappler, and then you have the guys like Dutch Savage and Tony Bourne and people like that held that belt. And it was a really good territory. They paid good, and other than the Fullers, I really liked that territory. I worked with the Fullers, I worked with John Boyd. He brought Luke and Butch over here, the sheep herders.
Yeah, but we also know them as the Bushwhackers because that's where they were really famous. Because the sheep herders gimmick didn't give them as much glory and fame as when they converted to the babyface Bushwhackers. So
they was good. They was good hands. Me and Boyd, we were heels. And I remember one time, Boyd had the New Zealand flag he always took out. So they got, easy heat, cheap heat, we'd be talking. And, and John said, if you don't, stand up for the flag, we're leaving. And so we went back to the dressing room, and, Robert is in there playing a hand of cards, and him and, I don't know, Jimmy might have been playing too, Jimmy Golden. And, Robert, John Boyd there. Robert, can I get in on a hand? He had that thick New Zealand accent.
Yes.
Then we went back to the ring, had a match, but Boyd was a good hand, and he come up to Portland now when I was Northwest champion, and it was good to see him back up there. He had a house up there, and, that's where he passed on, was up there in Portland, Oregon. And, so you run into people sometimes when you don't really expect to run into them again, but I did run into Boyd again up there in Oregon.
So would you say your favorite area to work was around Portland, Oregon? It sounds like you like that area.
Well, I had good luck. I wish I'd stayed up there because I had that gimmick. You can go to my Facebook account.
Tell our audience where to find you once again on Facebook.
It's just go to Carl, it's C-A-R-L, and it's Styles, S-T-Y-L-E-S, and go to my ring. It says I'm from Murphy, North Carolina, and we got matches on there. One of them being the Country Boy match I had against John Holiday. Also, you can go to that name on, YouTube, and I'm looking extremely good right now. So, there's lots of things opening up. And, if I wasn't ready to go, see, I was a bouncer in most of the prominent adult entertainment clubs in Atlanta.
How about that?
A lot of the after-hours clubs, I was offered a GM spot before this pandemic come up. But if I wasn't able to do something, I wouldn't, be ready to go. And, because like one of these clubs, you don't know what kind of, idiot might come in there. And if you're not prepared to do your job, you might get somebody hurt. So,
Carl,
I'm ready to go, and that's the reason I'm saying, if you want to book me, we'll look at them matches I got on Facebook. You'll find none better anywhere in the world, and anybody overseas looking at them, I'm a little older than some, but if you get that style of wrestling, that's what you need to, I think, still make it more entertaining. The storylines, of course, need to be a lot better than they are now, of course, because
So do you watch the product? Do you watch it today, Carl? Would you say you tune into Monday Night Raw or SmackDown?
I don't watch it that much. You know, they say, you know, you sort of get out of the habit of it. You know, back in the day, they had so many good, you know, you had believable top storylines. I wrestled when I was with Jody. I wrestled Wahoo McDaniels, and I wrestled wrestling too for the Fullers. You know, so I wrestled the biggest names in the industry. You know, at one time or another.
Which one was your favorite gimmick that you actually did in your career? Which one was your favorite one?
You know, we've done so many of them. They've done that eye gimmick. You know, it started down there. Lynn, which was a booker, you know, the grappler, he was good friends with the Freebirds, and they done that to Junkyard Dog, so he thought it would be better me actually blind, you know, lost an eye when I was 5 years old. And so I knew, you know, knew what it was all about to lose an eye and be handicapped. And so he thought it would be really good. We could make money, and I got it over extremely good. They got me over, and I got myself over as well, I guess. You know, I got to give myself a little credit. But
obviously,
it was over, and the houses really started going up. And like Piper said, one good angle can make the whole territory better.
Absolutely.
And Piper, you know, he had a mind for wrestling that was second to none. He give Art Barr that Beetlejuice gimmick. That's who thought that up with Piper. Because Piper was doing movies at the time. I was up there in '89. He'd already done. They Live was one of his very big breaks in Hollywood. Yeah, he done 2 or 3 movies. They Live being one of them. I think he done that in '87 or '88. But he was into that movie stuff, so he liked that Beetlejuice, and you know, I was the one that picked, Art up. You know, he got beat up or something, and you know, Piper wanted, you know, like a Hollywood type thing. He said, pick him up, you know, like he's your little buddy, you know, and just worried about your little buddy. So we done all kinds of stuff up there. And one of those matches, I had to do so many things. It's wonder I got them all in. I was taking pictures, and Piper and Lynn had these people coming in from the radio station, and we had to sort of, you know, we're selling out every week up in Portland, but, you know, they know what they was doing, and made it very entertaining. Everybody was entertaining, and yes, that being, you know, that was the main event, production, what I was doing. So what me and Lynn was doing was the main event, and I think we carried it pretty good, because I'll tell you what, that territory got bigger and better. I was there for a little over a year, and the houses just kept getting bigger every week that I was there. Let me ask you about the Texas territory. Did you spend much time with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds in that area? No, I never did work with them down in there. I know Matt Bourne went there, and the Grapplers from down in there, they went. And Al McGrill went. Al was a regular up there in Portland, and he went and worked down there for, you know, Fritz Von Erich, and heard it was a good territory to work. I think Ken Mantell was the booker. And did you ever work for Stampede Wrestling with Stu Hart? No, I never did. I really liked, you know, Stu there. He, believe it or not, I come back from Europe, and you know, I called Stu. I said, Stu, I'm back, you know, here, and I got a couple of months. And he said, well, Carol, it's this Calgary Stampede going on, and said I pretty much closed down for about 2 weeks. Got people running around with covered wagons and shooting guns, and he says, I just shut down. But he said, Carol, did you hear about Brody? And I said, no, I hadn't. He said, no. He said, that Jose Gonzalez, you know, killed him down there, you know, stuck a knife in him. And, unbelievable. So I didn't know nothing about it. About a year later, I was down there in the main events, you know, semi-main events with Gonzalez, you know. But I certainly hated to hear something like that happen. You know, professional, something like that shouldn't happen. Absolutely not. We ought to act like, you know, somebody with a little sense, and something like that just went way out of hand. I don't know what happened. I don't want to say whose fault.
Yeah, we don't need to speculate.
No, really.
We don't need to speculate.
Yeah, I don't need to speculate about it, but I like Brody, and I got along okay with Gonzalez, but I actually like Brody, quite a bit better because I know him, through Nord and them. And I like Carlos quite a bit. Carlos is always super friendly, and they had Joe Rica. He's kind of hard to get to know, but we're outsiders to them, because they owned that island, and they were nice people as far as I got along with them, but you ain't gonna get along with them as good as you would with Don Owens and that Kansas City territory. Now everybody worked Kansas City. Those were some of the nicest people I have ever met. Was Bob Geigel and Bob Brown and Sonny Myers. I had a prosthetic eye that busted. I had to go and have major surgery. They brought me back in.
Mm.
And, not everybody would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But they were really nice. And then, I got hurt up there first week I was there, and I just got married. And, Geigel come to the dressing room. I think went to the doctor, Ken Thames was up there and said, Carl, let's send you home. So, Geigel, my leg was busted. I busted a femur artery or, done something. My leg was black. And Geigel come in the dressing room, seen me, he said, my God, man, have you been to the doctor? And I said, no, sir, I haven't been. He said, man, you go to the doctor, said, you could have a blood clot and die. He said, I didn't bring you to Kansas City to kill you.
Wow.
He said, you go to the doctor. He said, I'll pay you something here till you get back to work. Well, he said, come by the office after you see the doctor and tell me what you said. So I went by the office the next day, and I said, Bob, he told me to stay off there about a week, 10 days, and I'll be fine. And he said, just get in the whirlpool. And he said, I'm not going to book you here for a week. And he said, just come back, and we'll get you started back. And he gave me a couple $100, tied me over, which he didn't have to do. But
did you just say, excuse me, Carl, did you just say $100?
Not a couple of hundred.
Couple $100. What year was that, sir?
Yeah, give me a couple of hundred to tide me over.
Yeah, but what year? What year was that, Carl? Can you tell our audience what year?
That was in 86, 87, 87, I think.
Do you realize the amount of money you're saying, though, Carl? That is considered what? Maybe today's standards of what the wrestlers are getting at NXT? What do you think about that? I mean, does that bother you that you hear this, that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into this industry, and today's generation is reaping the rewards of your hard work, sir?
Well, I mean, they paid us pretty good, though. I got paid, good. I mean, there's times I made really good. And
so you were satisfied with what they were giving you back in that era?
Well, I was living, and learning, and other than that, I made good money up in Portland, they paid me extra good.
Okay.
Don Owens is probably one of the better payoff promoters in our industry. So I was, well pleased with the payoff. I worked for Jared
You're talking about Jerry Jarrett, correct?
No, Jerry Jarrett, I worked for him, and I worked, Lawler's down there, and then Eddie Marlin. I remember working down there one time, and they put me in there with Bam Bam Bigelow.
Bam Bam Bigelow.
And I hit, I could hit the ropes really hard there.
Mm-hmm.
So I broke, the set of ropes up. I broke two of Geigel's ropes up there in Kansas City. We was on, Memphis had live TV though. So,
wow.
I hit the ropes hard, because, I had him throwing me off, hell, he weighed 300 pounds. I weighed about 270 or 280, so I hit them ropes and I popped up them ring ropes. And Eddie Marlin, he didn't know what to do,
Mm.
He said, he was running around there. They, that's live TV down there. We done live TV in Memphis. And, but, we had a lot of different experiences and, everybody, got along most of the time or at least we hope so anyway.
The Memphis wrestling territory actually throughout the years, decades, was said to be one of the great ones because of the fact that Jerry Lawler made us so strong down there. Would you say that's correct?
Well, he had good hands there. He always had Dutch. He had Macho Man. He had Bill Dundee. He had the Moondogs. Larry Booker, and he had Randy Colley. Randy helped me a lot when I got to Mid South because Randy, took I was nice, Scandal Akbar. He really liked me.
I love Skandar. I love Skandar. A great manager.
Yeah, his real name was James Weaver, but he really liked me there, and Kamala liked me, and Ray Candy liked me. I remember Ray went to Zambui Express, so we was wrestling at Sam Houston Coliseum, and Scandal was down there, and Ray was working the program with our owner, which is Cowboy Bill Watts. So he wasn't supposed to leave his feet. So hell, he called. He said, I got him over in the turnbuckle. He said, reverse it and hip toss me. So hell, he's flying around at 400 pounds like Salvo Guerrero. So the people got up and actually thought I was going to beat him. They popped.
Wow.
And, and Scandal was over there, his life and, his tail off, because he's seen them, he's seen the people come up. And he liked me. That's the reason they done it. If they hadn't liked me, they wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Randy Colley there, now he liked me a lot too. We used to go to the gym, and he showed me how to take care of wrestling boots, and showed me how to, do things there that, you need to do to, sort of make it on the road. But we was up in Oklahoma, and I was wrestling Eddie Gilbert.
Fast Eddie, right?
Yeah, Eddie was good hand, really good. And anyway, so he come out and got Eddie's attention, and I jumped Eddie, and the match was a lot better because when if I got stuck on something, if he was over there in the ropes, he'd crawl over there in the ropes and feed. He's a nightmare. He wasn't a bulldog, he's a nightmare. He had a hood on it, so he would give Gilbert, a cheap shot or something, and then I'd get back on Gilbert. So, they made the match a lot easier, and they're trying to teach me how to work, So, and then his dad was a referee for Tommy Gilbert. He was a really good hand. I never did see his work, but I heard he was really good. So Tommy got me back there and made me get on the concrete and told me I wasn't kicking out right. He made me kick out right. So, it was a good territory. That Mid-South territory had Dr. Dazin, we had Ted DiBiase, we had Jake Roberts, we had, Nord, and, I remember Nord, saying something one time. I said something about Dutch and Bill, and Nord said, Carl, he said, I said, they go out there, and when they have a match, it's just second nature, and everything goes right. He said, Carl, that's what you call being able to work. And eventually I got to where I could work, and I could sort of see how they done it. I remember having a match up in Morristown, Tennessee with Bill Dundee, and Moondog Spot said, which was Larry Booker, I think was his name. But he said that was one of the best matches he ever seen Bill have. He said, we had a heck of a match. It was in Morristown, that Tally Ward Center. For anybody that's ever been to Morristown, I guarantee you they went to Tally Ward to watch the wrestling. And Southeastern used to come up there.
Carl, I was going to say, you've lived quite the career, but you said the word gym earlier. Do you remember what was your bench press back when you were in your heyday? What would you say the most you bench press, being the size man that you are?
I was up around 565, 550, 565, 570. I was good on squats. I was a power lifter. Me and Doug Furnace, we are on YouTube wrestling, and was both, he was one of the best power lifters that ever lived. Very nice guy. He's the best as far as the squats. He squatted 981 in Hawaii at 200.
900, almost 1,000 pounds.
He got it, and his squat technique was, he had 37-inch thighs, and him and Danny Crockett was all Asian tag team champions. Danny was from Canada, And Doug could shoot, had one of the best drop kicks. They said him and B. Brian Blair had, they were
The Killer Bees.
They had two of the better drop kicks, but Furness could land on his feet. He had 37-inch thighs.
Wow.
His thighs looked like bowling balls. And I took a couple of young boys from the hometown up there to a seminar up in Gatlinburg. And that's where either one got into wrestling. And he, put a little seminar on. And I always liked Furness. He's a very nice guy. He did a lot of good things for kids later on. And he was into a lot of the rodeo stuff, too. And Murdoch, he liked that rodeo stuff, both of them, Murdoch from Texas and Furness, he is from Oklahoma.
Would you say you're talking about the late great Dick Murdoch, correct?
Yeah, Dick Murdoch. I liked him. He was a nice guy. I had a good enough match with him that Watts give me a chance. Because, I could throw good working punches. Got Dickie over in the corner and hit him with 2 or 3 good working punches, and then went to shoot him in, and then he shot me in and give me a big back drop. They said I could bop. I took a back drop from Furness. It's on YouTube. I went about 12 foot in the air because I really posted up off of him.
Wait a minute, you're 6'5", you said, right?
No, I'm about 6 foot. I'm about a little over
6 foot.
I'm 6'1". Doug is about 5'9", 5'10".
Okay.
But I went way up in the air because, I really, I posted up good on him.
Yes.
And I went high up, and looked pretty impressive. I've done it in a match with me and Boyd, I think, against Bob Armstrong and Doug in a match at Huntsville, I think. And I took the back drop, and, Bob, boy, he went ape over it, Bob Armstrong. He did curl. He said the highlight for the match that was that back drop. So that looked great. Then Bob, he got kind of excited. He said, "Carl, you got the best traps in the business, but don't tell Road Warrior Hawk I told you that, But he was happy. We had a good match. Everybody made it out of it okay. Going to another town, I was going up to Knoxville. We always done good up there at the Coliseum up there at Knoxville. Everybody's payday was usually pretty good there.
Now, you mentioned Bullet Bob Armstrong, correct?
Yeah, I've wrestled with Bob on several occasions.
How was he as a wrestler?
He was very good, Bob was. He had could get the crowd behind him. He had good psychology, and knowed, a lot of simple things that would get the match better. You didn't have to go up and break your neck.
Yes.
And he was, very good hand. I wrestled with boys, Steve and Scott.
Okay.
And both of them was really good there. You'd have good matches with either one of them any night of the week. And nice boys there, Wendell Cooley was there. I remember Dutch trying to teach him how to pick the guitar. And, you had a little fun there when you went there. Continental was got good territory to have fun in, and learn. I've worked with Tom Pritchard, Danny Davis. He's really good,
Absolutely.
He's a good wrestler. Danny Davis was. Worked with Sid Vicious.
You worked with Sid. You worked with Mr. Sid Vicious.
Yeah, I always liked Sid. He, we was pretty good friends. I was in that area there. His manager was downtown Bruno. And I like Bruno too there, and we all had a good time, when we was there. I was just learning and and getting a little bit better, I hope. And I met Rocky Johnson when I was working down in Memphis, when I had the
Let's establish who Rocky Johnson is. That is the father of the greatest name in sports and entertainment in Hollywood today, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. All right?
Yeah, he was down there, in 87. The boy was about 15 years old because he was staying with his mom and dad down there. And Rocky really liked me because I was built really good. And he thought I had a good chance of doing something. He recommended I go to Hawaii for his mother-in-law, Miss Malvia. But it didn't happen. But she's a really nice woman. I talked to her on the phone, sent her some material, and
have you watched the TV show by chance? Because you could have been on the show if they're talking about the wrestlers from the '80s.
Well, I've watched it a little. I just hadn't watched it much. But I was down there in Memphis in '87. When Rocky come into Memphis, and Rocky gave me the mother-in-law's number, which was Miss Malvia.
Mm-hmm.
He was a good hand. I worked with Rocky on 2 or 3 occasions when I was down there. Real good ring general.
How about the Chief? How about the Chief? You ever wrestled the Chief, Maivia?
Not ever did wrestle his father-in-law, that Chief Peter Maivia.
Yes, sir.
A little ahead of me there, but I heard he was real good. He got over up in New York really good, I think.
Yes.
And, the Samoans, I seen something there on the Samoans there. They had back in the heyday, when I first started, I worked with, J.D. Kyle, and my cousin was working with J.D., but an old guy for Nick Goulas was Ken Hawk, and he managed the Samoans, and they wrestled Jackie Fargo and Andre the Giant.
So how many encounters did you have with Andre backstage there?
I never was around Andre none backstage, but that was in the early 70s when they had that.
Oh, that's true.
We worked with, I worked with Ken Hawk, down in the ring, worked out some with him. Don't know whatever happened to Ken, but we did a little, small TV there when I was first starting in the early 80s, before I went to, to Watts. And he was a good guy, Ken Hawk was. He was different, But he was out of Cleveland there, Tennessee there. And good friends with Ronnie West. He was a good referee. And we run shows together. And we had Gordy's cousin, that Richard Slinger. He bought the ring up. He was really good. He was not a real big guy, but he could really go in that ring. He'd been going to Japan, 40 weeks of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So he was well conditioned. We made some money a time or two on some shows that we done on the independent, just did it ourselves.
So Carl,
pretty good time and then pretty good show on.
Carl, I'd like to ask you a question that has to do with Vince McMahon Jr., not Sr. So Vince McMahon Sr. sold his company to his son, essentially, who was a broadcast person at the time. So he's an announcer. He's an announcer. So how did you feel when you heard that Vince McMahon is basically Jr. about to take over professional wrestling, because he started to buy the territories in the 80s, and where he ultimately made himself the #1 promotion in all of professional wrestling? How is the energy of the wrestler? How are wrestlers feeling knowing that Vince McMahon Jr. was really taking away the territories and making it all about the World Wrestling Federation? Did you feel that this was good or bad for the business and taking away opportunities for wrestlers like yourself? Or did everyone just want to start working for Vince or the NWA with Crockett Promotions? So how do you feel the energy was in the 80s with this transitional time in wrestling?
Well, everybody was hoping, the territories would stay because, that's your lifeblood. I remember, back in the day, there's so many territories. If you could work at all, you could, get on with, used to, like in Tennessee there, you had Nick Goulas, which, Dutch and Dundee worked for Nick a lot. My cousin worked for Nick, and then you had, Jared, and they sort of took Nick's territory over, but then you had 2 or 3 down in Texas. You had Joe Blanchard, and you had Fritz Von Erich, and the guy out of Houston there, that Watts eventually got in with, but I forget his name now, but he was a nice promoter down there around Houston, and you just had so many places to go. You had, Stu Hart's Stampede. You had Don Owens' Pacific Northwest. You had a guy in California running, and you had guys in Puerto Rico. So people really didn't want the territories to go because they know that was the work. And wrestling was really at its biggest when all those territories was clicking. Because any Saturday night, like when I wrestled in Kansas City, we'd have a crowd in Kansas City. And then, we'd have a crowd when I wrestled up in Portland on Saturday night in Portland. And then, when I was in Continental, we'd have a crowd in Knoxville or Birmingham or everywhere we was at. So, wrestling was really big then as far as, people going to live shows. Because there's so many live shows going on.
So what was your favorite top 3 territories throughout your career to wrestle for? If you had to name 3 territories that you love the most to be at regularly, where would they be?
Well, I like the Mid-South because I got, everybody worked with me and it's nice, but the trips is really hard though. You're on the road a lot. You ask one of these guys that really worked there like like a Jim Duggan or somebody like that was there for years. I don't know how they stood it because it's just trail after trail.
Mm.
But, I like it for, for how they, the people that are really taking interest in you. And that includes Cowboy Bill Watts. He was a nice guy. When I got down, I remember I was working with Fantastics. And it was me and Tom Pritchard again, the Fantastics. And he come back there and told me, he said, you're standing on the ring, you wasn't feeding. Said, you look like an idiot. Said, you need, start feeding them baby faces on a comeback. And he said, and you're green and you're learning. I know that. But he said, them Fantastics, said, you're 280 pounds and they wasn't selling your punches. So he said, I am going to give them a cussing because they know better. You didn't. But, he's a good teacher. He's like a coach for us. And, but anyway, it was a good learning territory. And then just as far as the territory, the trips was good, the money was good. Portland was the best. Everybody knows Portland was the best. Like that buddy of mine, Rick Rogers, he knew Portland was really good, because everything clicked up in Portland.
Yes.
Continental was good because you had real easy trips. You worked 6 nights a week. And it didn't kill you to, get to the show. You had a few long trips, but not many.
And the three areas I would say overseas would be Mexico, Japan, and Puerto Rico. Obviously, that's a little bit overseas, but not too much. But Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Japan. Out of those 3 areas, would you say that one of those countries gave you the best money?
Well, Japan used to pay really good. I never did get to go to Japan. I had some people, that seen me on this internet that have showed some interest. But
would you go today to Japan if they booked you at New Japan Pro Wrestling?
I'm sure, if we could work a deal out and it'd be beneficial to them and me both, we could certainly come to some, understanding where I could certainly help them out.
Well, Carl, you're from the South. You said you grew up where? Where'd you grow up?
There's a little town, Murphy, North Carolina.
What's the population of Murphy?
When I was growing up, maybe 2,000, maybe.
Hold on, one timeout. That's like a house show attendance. What 2,000 people in the whole town?
That's about it. It's small, It's a pretty big town. It's a double-A school, But,
wow.
Some of the schools were smaller, like Andrews, but somebody like Dutch, now he grew up in Walhalla, South Carolina. That's about like Murphy or smaller.
Now, have you ever been to Los Angeles, Carl?
Yeah, I've wrestled in Los Angeles. I didn't wrestle at the bigger venues, but wrestled in a lot of the smaller venues there, and wrestled in Bakersfield, Santa Barbara, and a lot of the Southern California area, and been there.
So the difference between the amount of people in Southern California and where you came from. Were you in shock the first time you ever saw Los Angeles?
No, not really, because I've been around. I've lived in Atlanta by then. And
I see.
I've lived, it was a shock when I first got to Mid-South. I went big venues. Especially Houston, Dutch, usually drove and
yes.
get us to the town, because I didn't know how to get around then. I learned, pretty quick.
Yeah, you didn't have GPS back then. You had to search on the map or get directions in the gas station, right? How'd you get around?
Well, ran McNally Road map for, directions at the gas station. And, Dutch, he was a proven veteran, been with Nick Goulas, and, he knowed how to get around, I mean, it wasn't nothing, it's second nature to him, but, that's, Dundee went with us a lot. He rode with us, and that golden boy, Jerry Gray, rode with us some. And,
now, do you happen to have a road story where you guys wanted to strangle each other because you couldn't get to the next town because somebody didn't know how to give the right directions? Did you ever get in that circumstance in the car with Abdullah the Butcher or anybody else?
Well, actually, it happened with Dutch. I was up in Oklahoma, and with Grizzly Smith was Jake Roberts'
dad. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I had some greenhorn driving, and there had been Dutch in the back. And, that Grizzly Smith's about 6'8", so he had an old bucket there. He had one of them old bench seats. And that thing was way back there. And then Dutch was pinned in, like we was in a cop car or something, And then that old greenhorn got us lost there. And Dutch said, that damn greenhorn said, that's the longest trip I've ever had. We finally got back to Alexandria, Louisiana, we fell out of the car, because we'd been cramped up back in there for 6-8 hours, it felt like.
You're not a small man, Carl, so I couldn't envision that. I'm only 5'5", 125 pounds of dynamite and destruction, so I can only imagine what you were going through sitting in that car, my friend.
Yeah, Dutch is pretty tall, too. I guess Dutch is pretty close to 6, about 6 foot. I'm a little taller than Dutch, maybe about the same size, but we pinned back up there. And finally, we got to the Alexandria, and we went to, he went to his apartment. I went over to the old motel I was staying in, and we crashed there. I think we had shows, that same day there. But we got 6 hours of sleep or so, to strike out again. But we had, we had my car, the next, that day, so we wasn't, pinned back up in there. Like we took my car to the town, so we had plenty of room, so that made the trip better, made it more bearable, but the old boy got us lost.
So,
and then got the pinned back in there with that bench seat there,
Now, Carl, you mentioned earlier about injury. How many injuries in your career would you say you've had total?
Well, a couple of years ago, I tore a quad tendon, and had a really good surgeon, so I come back, good from that. But I've done a bunch of squats today, and my thighs are, pretty close to 30 inches now. So, definitely putting some muscle on, but arms are over 20. But worst thing that ever happened, I left Portland, which was a big mistake, because I had that country boy gimmick. I had me a little song there. And you can see that match on, YouTube or the Facebook, which is Carl Styles.
How do we search you on the YouTube? Just under Carl Styles? Is that how they find your matches?
Go to Carl with a C and Styles, just like Facebook, STYLES.
Okay, and that's where we find you also on YouTube.
You can find a bunch of matches on YouTube, from Puerto Rico and everywhere else. But anyway, I was getting that gimmick down good, and I went to Puerto Rico, and I was doing good there. Like I said, I had that good match with Youngblood. And, the booker, which was Gonzalez, wanted to work with me. And so, Youngblood told me, he said, Carl, he's going to work with you. He said, he wants to work with you. He's going to work with you. You're going to jump him and TV, and he's going to get color, and you're going to start with him.
When you say get color, just so our fans know who are not wrestling fans, that means you're going to bleed.
Yeah, get color. Ron Starr, he showed me how to do it. I didn't know how to do it. I said, Ron, I might get the referee. Just go ahead and gap me. He said, Carl, you're in the main events now down there. You'll bleed every night. Do it yourself. So it wasn't, it wasn't that hard, and he watched, and he said, I've done pretty good. He said, I really couldn't tell it. He said, you done pretty damn good. But I done everything the way he told me, because like I said, Ron Starr was a really good hand there.
Mm-hmm.
And on on that dark side of the ring, I've seen, all about that Brody murder,
Yes.
And when his widow got down there, the only one I recognized at Brody's funeral was Ron Starr. But I remember wrestling Ron Starr down there in Puerto Rico, and right after I had that food poisoning, I think. And it was in an old metal building in the middle of August. And I about died, and we went about 10 minutes, and that Ron Starr now, he'd been in it for a long time, he could go. So I beat him with a power slam. But, it was a good match because, Ron Starr was a really good hand. I don't know whatever happened to him, but he was real good there,
So the conditions of Puerto Rico to wrestle there, they weren't so good or good to you?
Well, they were okay. It's just, it's hot in that building, but we was doing TV that night too. Between the lights and it being about, I don't think they had air in there either. But the outdoor stadiums is a little better because, it's pretty cool over there night. It wasn't, about 80 degrees overnight. So it wasn't too bad one of them baseball stadiums.
And Carlos Colon was in charge of booking you, or who was in charge back then?
Well, the Gonzalez, he's one, Jose Gonzalez Invaders, one that was a booker when I was
there.
I
see.
And then a guy from Canada was a booker there one time, Leo Burke, he was a booker.
Did you ever encounter Carlos Colon?
Carlos, I always go on with Carlos, I always liked him. He called me, I think he called me Francisco or something. He had a name for me, so I guess he liked me, not less, I took it that he did, but, we talked about Dutch a lot. I think it made that Gonzalez mad one time because we were talking about Dutch, and Dutch had worked there on and off for years, was a booker. So anyway, Gonzalez there, man, they said, see you, Carlos, see you, Dutch, so he sort of pissed him off. And I said, I told him, Carlos, I guess that pissed him off. I made me talking about Dutch. But, I didn't care. Carlos seemed to be enjoying the conversation. Well, anyway, I wasn't trying to hurt him or nobody else. So I wasn't worried about him, He should have been, I guess. But, I wasn't, I don't think a man's going to try to kill somebody 2 or 3 times.
No, we don't normally expect that. No. So.
I can take care of myself. I've had people that have got me before, and I come out pretty good. I mean, I was down in Atlanta on the south side working down there. I worked, I got a good reputation down there. I worked for the Gallardis, and another guy that worked for the Gallardis was old Charlie Wright, the Godfather. He worked for the Gallardis in Las Vegas at the Cheetah.
Yes.
And he was in with Mike Gallardi. They paid him really good money. They really liked Charlie.
Indeed, and he is a Hall of Famer as well. Now in the WWE.
Well, he should have been. He had that gimmick down. This Puerto Rican there sent me a match on Facebook of Charlie wrestling a handicap match with him. And the thing with the gimmick is if you can come out and entertain them people like with a song or something, I would say I could dance with that gimmick. I ain't no dancer, but, if just like I said, just look at the country boy gimmick and you see me doing the gimmick. And like I said, I had it down good. I was an idiot for not staying up there. Because Don and Roddy and Lynn had let me stay, and I'm sure they would have signed me to that gimmick, and I'd got a lot better.
How's your dancing skills today, Carl? How would you rank it from 1 to 10? What's your favorite type of dancing?
I really can't dance, but it's a pretty good song they give me. The Office give me the song, and told me to get in the overalls and all that, which that wasn't no big deal there. I give me the overalls up where I can move a little better in them.
All right.
And anyway, you just sort of, it's kind of a dance, and then I was always real good with kids there. It's a kid-friendly gimmick. And
did you play heel much ever?
Yeah, I was a good heel. I started out as a heel in Mid-South. and learned how to be a heel.
What's your favorite? Heel or face? Which one's your favorite to do?
I can do either one of them. I can be a good heel or a good baby face. It depends on what the office wants. But, with baby face, if you're good with the kids, that's always a plus. Piper pretty well showed me that.
Piper was the best heel/face because he could do either one. And the thing, though, I heard an interview with Piper. He said he enjoyed playing heel more than he enjoyed playing face.
Well, the heel, calls the match. And, of course, with Youngblood, I was a heel, but he was such a good baby face that he come in the ring and he started calling spots. He got on me real quick, so I didn't have time to think. And that's the reason the match was so good is, we both were thinking and we're thinking on the same page.
So, Carl, I have a question.
I really liked that match. He liked it, too.
I have a question because we're going to be wrapping up in about 10 minutes here. I was going to ask you, Carl, what, in your opinion, is the key factor to making wrestling great, in your opinion? Do you feel like the wrestlers of today are just lacking in what you guys had back in the day? Because I think the gimmicks were great back in the 80s. That was what introduced me to pro wrestling. If I was to watch wrestling today, let's say I'm a kid today watching wrestling, I don't think I'd actually want to watch wrestling, to be honest with you, because it doesn't interest me. But those gimmicks of the 80s, Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, Jake the Snake Roberts, Andre the Giant, those were the gimmicks that made you want to watch the show. Okay, so let's think about it. Do you think today's generation can ever pick up their game and become as great as your generation of wrestlers? What do you think?
Well, I remember Terry Gordy there, his uncle trained me there, and he was a very nice man, handicapped man himself. He had one arm, they called him Captain Hook. Nice guy.
Captain Hook.
Kind of had a windshield business down there in Chattanooga, Rossville. But, Gordy said it all and said it the best. Believability is the name of the game. And a lot of times these shows just ain't got the believability with the characters or the matches or, back in the day, I was watching, Hercules Hernandez. What an impressive guy that was.
Yes, sir.
Great worker, big as a house.
I remember him.
You could draw money with him.
With the big chain.
Partner of mine up in Oregon, Billy Jack Haynes, good-looking guy, good worker.
Full Nelson.
Believable. Well, they had me a full Nelson too, up in Oregon. Don give everybody that was strong a full Nelson. That included Jesse Ventura or anybody else.
The body.
Snuka had the full Nelson as well as Ventura. Both of those guys, built very good. Snuka, he's built.
Was Jesse Ventura, I want to ask you real quick, because you mentioned the former governor of Minnesota and one of my favorite wrestlers as well in the 1980s, because he had a short-lived career as a wrestler because of injury, but Vince McMahon made him announcer. Would you have been willing to accept a different role besides wrestler, or did you enjoy the fact that you were a great wrestler? Would you have accepted what Jesse did? He was smart. He kept himself in the business, even though he couldn't wrestle anymore. Would you say that he was also a great person backstage as well?
I think he was a nice guy. I met him one time and, was talking to him. I've seen a picture of him at a LaFrenzi's gym up in Portland. It's an old Nautilus type gym. And I said, Jesse, I seen you jumping off the second rope on the Terry Funk with double axe, and Jesse, very, I really liked that. Brother, that's a good gym, and he started getting into, thinking about what a good gym it was. And he said, brother, that was a good gym, and he, got talking then, and nice guy there. And I liked him there, at times, met him once, I think, but I wasn't around him a lot. But, seemed like a good guy and a very good commentator, made the matches better, certainly helped McMahon's product,
Absolutely.
McMahon's product probably hasn't been as good since he left.
Mm-hmm.
And might not never be as good because they had halfway believable storylines, and if he had a couple of good storylines that could come back, that might be something that would help his business. I know he gets a lot of revenue just from the TV. But
Absolutely. Now that the WWE network, just so you know, is on the Peacock network, everything on that network, Carl, has commercials. So you cannot watch a match all the way through and then get to the next match because there's a commercial in between. So even on the network, on the pay-per-view, which originally didn't have commercials, now you have to sit through the commercials, Carl. So it's definitely a business that has a lot of money, and it's pretty much strictly business. The competition aspect is over. So, let's just hope that we can keep wrestling interesting enough for, gentlemen like yourself to continuously flourish and be booked, because you said you're willing to be booked. Now, as we wrap it up, I want you to tell me every which way that Carl Styles can get booked today. We're talking about 2021, Carl. We want to get you booked for today's generation of wrestling. How do we get Carl Styles booked? Give us all the ways to book Carl Styles today.
Well, like I said, that Facebook's got a contact number and an email address. And
repeat it to everybody. Spell it out. Your name, spell it, Facebook search, whatever way you want to advertise. Go ahead.
It's Carl, C-A-R-L, and it's Styles, S-T-Y-L-E-S. And I'm from up around Murphy, North Carolina. And, you'll see the recent pictures. The pictures are very impressive. I weigh about 285 now. And, well, you've seen the pictures, and you know what they are, and you know the matches. You've seen them.
I've seen your matches. Yeah, I saw the match with Doug Furnas for sure. That was my favorite one. And I can tell you that there's a lot of good work left in the tank for you, right? Would you say, Carl? Would you feel like you're in good ring shape right now?
Well, I'd have to work out, because this pandemic, shut everything down. Nobody's been working.
How have you dealt with the pandemic, Carl? How have you been dealing with it yourself personally?
Well, I just, I haven't done much. I had a job, running a club there in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and
Did Ric Flair come in by chance yet? Because you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, home of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
Well, I hadn't worked there yet. I was going to work there. I know this guy is like a world champion arm wrestler, and big guy. He was going to use me, but we're pretty good friends. I think he's going to maybe make me a GM or something. But Scott Norton, he's a Minnesota boy. And he came to Portland, and he had that good career with NWO.
Yes, he did.
He was a good arm wrestler, and that Rick Rude was a good arm wrestler.
Absolutely, Rick Rude, the late great Rick Rude.
Yeah, he was a very good arm wrestler along with Scott Flash Norton.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Carl, that Ravishing Rick Rude was actually an arm wrestling champion at one point.
Yeah, he done really good. Him and Scott Norton both done good with it. And this guy that was going to, use me in the club there, and was going to really push me as far as making me some money. He was real good at that arm wrestling, So, we'll say we'll keep this thing going, and everything is eventually going to get back to normal. We hope.
No, we will. We will.
If it does, then there'll be a lot of opportunities your way, my way, and everybody else's. And everybody sort of get rid of, it's been a bad year, everything was shut down. I was in Charlotte about 8 months ago talking to that buddy there, and, that town was about shut down. Georgia hadn't been shut down near as bad as the North Carolina end, but some of these states have really been hit hard.
Yes, they have, sir. Well, Carl.
Thankfully, Georgia wasn't one of them. The gym up here where I'm at was closed about 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
But I seen a guy that come to our gym up here, the one I'm going to, about a month ago. He said the gym was closed down there in Charlotte for about 7 or 8 months.
Mm.
So it was bad there, And there's a lot of states as bad or worse than Charlotte, North Carolina, but North Carolina was pretty bad.
Well, I let my audience know all the time. I hope they have an attitude of gratitude. I hope they're staying healthy and happy. And I do wish the same for you, sir, as you're still continuously working in this great business that we call professional wrestling. All right, Carl, I think we're going to wrap it up right here because I want to bring you back on for future dates, and I want to bring you to our live comedy events once we start doing that. You said you'd be interested in doing stand-up comedy?
Well, I could be doing something with it there, I mean, you got to learn how to do something. I mean, I didn't just start out being a wrestler. I had to learn, and you have, pretty good teachers. That's always a good start. You got people like Dick Murdoch out there working with you, or that Nightmare, Moondog, Randy Colley, or Dutch or Dundee, or people like that. And Scandor, you get people like it, and Eddie Gilbert, people like that helping you. You can learn if you've got any want to in you, and then you're watching people, work out. I've seen a lot of the guys working out, and then I got in there and learned how to work out right too. That didn't hurt, and was a good, power lifter, and then was a good, power lifter, bodybuilder, good bodybuilder. Now I know how to work out, so that's something everybody can't do, but I learned. But something that you got to do, you got to learn to do it.
Absolutely. I was a Chic wrestling manager, and I took some bumps, and I took a guitar shot to the head. So definitely, I learned how to be able to be a great Chic just based on being in that ring. But Carl, I'm going to wrap it up now, and I want to say thank you for being on our show. We appreciate your time, and I hope that we'll see you in Las Vegas or wherever we end up doing our live events when we're doing them in 2021. Can I hope to have you there with us?
Yeah, I'd be glad to come. I got a good friend out there in Las Vegas, and anytime I come, he usually pick me up in a souped-up BMW. So if I come to the airport, I'll definitely be right there. He's a good guy there. I met him at the gym, and he's got a lot of respect for the wrestling business. He's from Louisiana, and he knows I started there, and he's got a lot of respect for me, got a lot of respect for him, and that's what makes friendships, respect. So.
Yes, sir.
It's good to have friends. And, you go out there. If I go out there, if I went out there tomorrow, he'd be out there to pick me up, not unless something was wrong with his kid or the wife or something come up. But other than that, he'd be there. So.
Well, Carl, I know.
People you depend on.
I know we've only known each other for about a month now or so, or less than a month even. Would you say we're friends? Are we good?
Yeah, I consider us friends. You're doing what you can to make a friendship, calling and want to cultivate a friendship and somebody that I can trust, and I hope you consider you to trust me there. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'll do it.
You did our show, didn't you? We had some hiccups here and there, but you know what? We did a podcast, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did. I had a friend of mine there trying to help us get started. She was a dancer, ex-dancer at a club I worked in, Atlanta, Gallardi Club, and very, very nice girl there, attractive girl, but, nice girl with boots. And, when I was in that industry, I treated the girls with, the respect they deserved. We're all trying to make money, and most of them had bills and families, and most of the time I had a girlfriend, and I wasn't in there to hit on them. I was in there to make us money.
Yes, indeed. You're a businessman. You're a businessman.
And, I treated it as such, and most of the girls really liked me, because I had a pretty good look most of the time, and because I know that to take care of business, I wasn't going to get run over.
Very good, sir. Well, let's put it on the calendar that at some point in time, your friend Larry is going to pick you up at the airport, Las Vegas, and we're gonna get going with this in 2021. We're gonna do stand-up comedy. We're going to do live shows from Vegas. We're going to take it all over the U.S. if we can. And we're going to get you on that bill there, on that ticket, on that match card. What do you say, Carl?
Sounds good, Larry. I'll be looking forward to working with you and making this thing go.
Excellent. Well, we're going to bring you back on. We're going to bring you back on, Carl. We're going to bring you back on. I want to bring you back on at a future date. You're saying yes to me? You'll come back on the show?
Yeah, certainly. I remember Piper, when we was doing that, thing with the eye gimmick, Piper asked me to do something. He said, Carl, anytime I've asked you to do something, I've been well pleased with the outcome. So he was pleased that I could do something when he asked. He could depend on me. And we're friends as well. He's a good guy, and everybody up there was good. Sandy Moore was a good guy. I liked him. like his boy Jesse. I worked with him in Memphis.
Yeah.
Nashville, and Art was my little buddy, you know, because Piper gave him the Beetlejuice gimmick, which was a good gimmick, really.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do, Carl, is we're going to pay tribute to Roddy Piper by having you at our live comedy shows, because, you know, Roddy Piper was doing stand-up right before his passing. So I got the chance to meet him, and he was an excellent, excellent person to me, very respectful. I regret not taking a picture with him because he's passed away, but his legacy will live on because his name is on the Comedy Store. I don't know if you know that, where Jim Carrey performed, Robin Williams, Eddie Murphy, and myself. I performed at the world-famous Comedy Store out there in Hollywood on the Sunset Strip. So we're going to bring you on stage, and we're going to say we're dedicating it to Roddy Piper. I think that's the game plan for 2021. You say yes to it?
That'd be fine. That'd be something Roddy would enjoy. You know.
He will enjoy it. He'll enjoy it from the best seat in the house. What do you say?
I say that'd be a winner there, and that'd be a good way to honor his memory and, you know, honor, you know, us being able to do it for him.
Absolutely. Well, Carl, thank you. I'm going to wrap it up by saying thank you to my audience here. We've had Mr. Carl Styles right here on one of the greatest, basically, in my opinion, Carl, because you know they're the most recent one, and now you're going to be the greatest episode in the history of Larry's new wrestling podcast and stuff, where we talk about wrestling and we talk about stuff. Thank you, Carl, once again. We'll see you soon, Carl.
Appreciate it, Larry. You have a good evening.
You too, sir. All right, audience. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.